Hey, Ho patrons, this is Pierce. I just wanted to give you a quick heads up that when we started recording the show, we had not heard from Beige, and it was unusual, but we thought he was just missing a recording session and was just feeling a little bit under the weather and hadn't responded to us, but it was a little worse. We found out that our homie was in bad shape. He's doing better, and please send just good thoughts and prayers his way, and he will hopefully be joining us soon. And he'll tell us his amazing story when he returns. Love you, Beige. Get better, buddy. Well, there's two ways that we could look at our situation today without Beige. We could look at it as a way to get a few more of our own ideas memorialized in this recording. It's a little sad. Well, it'll be a combination of the both, I guess. Isn't that the way life is?
Yes. Mr. Beige is not feeling very well. He took a little trip on vacation, and I think he got a little sick. So
he took a little trip from friendship zone, which is where you usually respond to people on the phone. And so he's taken a detour from...
Yeah, he muttered something about him needing space from you for some reason. I'm not sure why.
That's odd that he said that to you and not me. Well, that's awkward. So we're going to power through this one without our beloved Beige. We hope that he recovers and is feeling better soon. Appreciate you once again, Red. I always feel like an obligatory thank you is needed, and it's from the heart because of the journey, the quest you make to get here.
You know, there is a lot of pain and suffering involved.
That brings us, and sorry to interrupt you, but it's a good segue into what our show will be about, which I like to get out early, but then we just start running our mouth. You guys are such blowhards. But I think that we can help people through our pain. We can do one of two things. We can either go through an event that brings us turmoil and anguish and become jaded and maybe indifferent to others, just negative. And then, or we could help people with the pain and suffering we've been through. And in this episode, we'll try to discuss the most painful memories we have so that we then maybe are helping others. Does that sound like the premise we discussed?
Dude, it's a community service. And before the listeners turn off this episode because they're like, gosh, this is going to be so dark and depressing. I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
I promise you it's not going to be.
Yeah. Hang in there. Enjoy. Stay tuned. Buckle up. This is going to be a good one.
Heroes of
humility, 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 humility. This is not a charade. This is real. These words you are about to hear are coming from real humans on a mission to save the human race from itself. Buckle up while these delusional heroes of humility, aka HoHs, attempt to right the wrongs in everyday human behavior. All right, well, Red, it's good to see you, man. And we miss Beige, but we're going to power through. And one of the things that came to mind when I was thinking of painful, and I don't know if I should assume I should be going first. Do you want me to go first? Because I'm going to discuss a very difficult ordeal I went through that I think made me a better person ultimately. And in being a better person, may be able to help others.
No, you're fired up. Go for it.
Okay.
Go.
Go. The first very painful ordeal that I went through, the one I went way back into the recesses of my mind, into my history of what made me...
You didn't hurt anything, did you?
The strong... No, it hurts a little bit, honestly, to think about it. But it was, when kids are, when they lose a good goldfish or they lose a pet, that's the first time that they learn that things don't last forever and that there is an end. And maybe they even wrestle with the existential existence. I mean... I was a pretty smart kid, I guess. I'm bragging. I don't mean to, but I started to think, what is this life all about? And this was early because it was brought on about a very traumatic event that occurred to me.
Don't all the special kids say that they felt that they were always the one that
my mom told me I was special.
Exactly. Okay,
and
that's how I figured it.
Let's not spend too much time on that part, but I think what you're getting at is it possible I'm not as special as I think I am? And the truth is, no.
We all can't be blue ribbon first place holders. No.
Yeah. Thank you. But once again, we detour. Let's bring this back to the pain and suffering.
Okay, pain and suffering. Sorry, focus.
Thank you for introducing some levity, because I hope people are sitting down. This is going to be a tough one. I lost a dog. His name was Tippy, and I used to play with him a lot. Now, I may have touched on this story before. Do you recall me discussing this in a previous episode? Be honest.
I don't remember about the dog passing, but I think for some reason Tippy sparks a memory in my head.
So maybe we won't spend too much on it, but this was the very first traumatic event for me. I knew this dog very well. We communicated through obviously different noises. I would talk to him about my deepest secrets that I didn't tell my parents. He kept a secret really well. But he also would tell me things that nobody else could understand. And one night I heard him say something that nobody else understood, because I told my mom, and she said, "Oh, he's okay. He's just playing in the front yard." Well, I knew there was something wrong, and it was like he was asking for my help. I ran up to the front of the yard, and he had bitten into a horny toad, which is what the informal word, I think, for what they're called. And I've heard in research since, because this was traumatic, that they secrete an enzyme from their system when they're scared or attacked. But they're also not a very digestible creature, and my Tippy found that out because he bit into that toad, I believe. And my dad struggled to try to remove the horny toad or whatever he had put in my pet's mouth out, and my dad couldn't. And I started to see my dad. I never saw panic in his face, but I definitely had never seen worry like I saw that day. And because I was young, you just don't have a frame of reference, but that was painful because I could see it. And I looked at my dad. My dad was my hero. He could always figure everything out. He always had the answers. But the look in his eyes, I realized my dad won't be able to fix this. It's not going to go away. And my dad looked at my mom, and my mom saw the same thing I did, and she just started crying. And I had never seen my dad cry before. And then I saw what appeared to be a tear welling up in his eyes. And that's when I was like, what's happened? Like, it was just traumatic. We held the dog. My dad held it and started to try to fight back the tears, but he couldn't. And Tippy just died in his arms. And we watched him take his last breath, trying to fight for air. And there was nothing we could do. And my dad, we took Tippy to the backyard, almost instinctively. My dad made sure, obviously, that he was gone and started to dig. And we dug, my dad dug forever. He made a really deep, we had coyotes out where I lived. I mean, obviously there's horny toads running around, coyotes. I lived in a wild location. And my dad piled it with rocks, put him in there with a sheet that we had, and made sure that he looked comfortable and said a prayer. And all of a sudden Tippy was gone, and I had my real first encounter with loss, dude. So I hope that hasn't scarred anybody else, but it scarred me. And the point of this is we started thinking about, and I don't want to take full credit about, I saw this on a message in a church episode that I watched this morning, but the idea that how does your pain allow you to help others? And I think that helped me experience loss. And then I'm sure through some reciprocity, I have maybe helped others when they've had loss, not just necessarily with a pet, but in some other way where I've been able to have compassion because I went through something so rough at an early age.
Yeah, I will say too, because I can see both aspects. I mean, whether you're a parent now or obviously you were a child at one time and you had parents, experiencing your child experiencing that as a young person, it's their first experience with something that like they lost and they will never get it back. No matter how much they love it, it's time for it to go. And it definitely is painful, but I guess one of the topics that I had in my mind about suffering and pain is that it will make the good times better, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. If you focus on not the loss, but on the times that you had, that will make the loss better. And it's one of those things, whether it's relationships with parents, with friends, that there's always ups and downs, and it makes the good times even better because they have some meaning behind it, and it's always temporary, right? So it makes those good times better.
Yeah, it's temporary. There's a way you can look at it, but of course, when you lose something like that, it's permanent. That's, I think, the hardest part to try to process, especially at an early age, but it allows you to be ready for certain losses. It's like when you're a kid and you're watching Chips or whatever your favorite show is, and that was on prime time. I'm dating myself when I was a kid, but they were shows that always had a happy ending.
Well, yeah, but think about it. There was some sort of suffering, some sort of pain, and it ended well. It had, whether it's a moral story at the end of it, but it worked out in the end. And I guess that's where I'm saying that pain was temporary, that suffering was temporary, even though like when you're in it, it sucks and it doesn't feel like it's ever going to end. But your 30-minute, hour-long show, there was like a happy ending because it was like, hey, you saw it through and you endured the bad times, and now you're rewarded with the good times.
How do you think having those experiences does allow you to, now you're a father and I'm not, but certainly I'd imagine with your kid, it's given you an ability to help him when he has something that he gets really disappointed with?
Oh, of course. And to be honest with you too, it's as crazy as it sounds. I just saw like an Instagram reel of a female comedian. I can't remember her name, so I'm drawing a blank on her name, so I can't give her credit. But part of her skit that she talked about was she was relaying it to about Generation X, which we happen to fall into, about how they're suffering with Generation X. And when she elaborated, because at first you're kind of like, suffering, what? But in the Generation X, when we were raised, we weren't catered to like kids are now. And I don't want to sound like this old guy beating up on the newer generations coming forward, but we all know that there's a cycle of how there's parenting and how people tend to parent their children over the generations, and how those kids are raised as adults, and then how they raise their children growing up. But what to her point was, Gen X had some suffering, meaning the kids weren't catered to. You went outside and you were just outside all day, and you think about it like, what did I eat? What did I drink? I didn't have a debit card or phone pay or a wallet with cash. Like, I maybe had some pocket change, or I don't know. I ate at my friend's house. I can't think of it. We drank out of the hose. But I guess to my point is that she experienced our Gen X suffering as kids made our adulthood so much better. And also, it's a strive for life, because if you've seen the bad times, you don't like the bad times, so you strive for better, if that makes sense. It's almost like a motivation. And I was like, wow, that actually kind of spoke to me, because actually when you are a parent trying to raise a kid, you always have this focus of, we can all imagine as a kid, there was something that happened to us that we're like, as when we become parents, we're going to do this different. I don't care. You could have the best parents, the worst parents. There's something in your mind that you say, when I become a parent myself, I'm going to do this different. And at minimum, usually like, you know what, I want to be at least a little bit better than my parents, or try to strive to be better than our parents. It's not a cut down. It's just, that's the way it is. So you tend to do probably a little bit more for your kid than that was done for you. But then you start looking at it as, this kid might not have suffered as much as we have, meaning you're doing more catering to him or them. And they won't have a motivation on their own in their life if they never felt the loss of not having something, the motivation to like, hey, does it suck cutting the grass as a teenager and getting allergies and dealing with like insects and picking all that stuff up? It's hot outside. But you're rewarded with the good work of the way it looks and the upkeep of your house. And then in turn, when it's your time to be a homeowner and you do it, you already know the rewards of the hard work. So it's not so much a chore of a task. I mean,
yeah. And I think also when something bad happens, I noticed that my parents used to do, being a fellow Gen Xer, I suppose, that they didn't make as big a deal out of it as I see happen routinely when I'm in the grocery store or wherever now. Like, it is a crisis if something goes sideways in a kid's life, and it has the makings of that if you react that way to everything. I saw a relative and their little one get upset or have something go wrong, but they reacted so well to it, and one of the first things they say is, "You're okay. It's going to be okay. I think that plays a role.
Yeah, and if you think about a lot of the things that you have in your life, whether materialistic or physical or relationship-wise, there was probably some sort of suffering. I mean, as great as it is, whatever it is, I know for me, most of the things I have that I probably hold dearest to my heart, there was some sort of suffering involved. Like you said, whether it was a kid. Like people go, what do you mean suffering? Think about when that little kid, there's, of course, my wife suffered physically with pain, but, the late nights crying, the diapers, and them chasing them around, but that suffering is rewarded with all the good times that you had. And again, I'm not talking just as a parent, but when you were as a child, is maybe how your parents reacted to you. So there's some take in that. Like one of my most cherished possessions that I have now is my old 66 pickup truck. That it looks great now, but let me tell you, when I got it, there was a lot of suffering and pushing it and trying to get my change together to get a new part because it didn't run. And now that it's in a state where I was able to afford to get it where it looks now, there's a lot of enjoyment, but it comes knowing that it came from such a low place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so it's like you can cherish it better, right? Because if it's, or like your first girlfriend or your first boyfriend that you have and you break up. Remember, you can kind of remember, and it might sound cheesy when you were like a young teenager or whatnot. You had your first little boyfriend, girlfriend type of thing, and you break up, and man, how devastating and heartbroken you were. And then the second one comes and the third one comes, and it's kind of like, it's not that big of a deal, right?
This pain isn't completely novel to me. This reminds me of one, man, when I was, not too long after I lost Tippy, there was this girl in the neighborhood, and she was like, to me, an angel. And I knew this girl's pretty. And her name was Katie. I won't say her last name in case she's listening. She probably is.
This is a few years ago.
Yeah, this was back when, like I said, I must have been maybe just around 6, maybe.
Wow, this is way back in the world.
I have a good memory, I think. So I just remember Katie and we went through a service together at church. We did everything. Our families were kind of tight. And then she wanted me to come over and watch the newest MTV video, which was Michael Jackson's Thriller. And so, okay, I went over there, and our parents are together. There's a lot of hype, and she's all excited. I sit down, and all of a sudden, the video starts to play. It's like a small movie. I'm sure I don't have to explain the video Thriller to people. I would hope most people have seen this or have some frame of reference.
At least people that watch our show or listen to our show.
I would think so. Maybe our listening, the ilk of our audience, the type of people listen. But yeah, so he comes out, and I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good groove. And then all of a sudden, there's some scary parts in that. Now, I was, I like to think of look, I had been through the loss of Tippy, and nothing against guys shedding a tear, getting misty, but I just never saw my dad cry, except for that one time. The second time I ever saw my dad cry was when I was an adult, and it hurt almost as much, maybe more because I could understand it differently. And it was when he told me that he had regrets about and missed my mom, when my parents split up. But so sitting there watching Thriller, and there's no way to look really cool in front of Katie when you're kind of scared of what you're forced to watch. And everybody else is like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I'm just like, when is this torment going to be over? I'm sitting there with my eyes open. I kind of looked away a couple of times, but I'm like, you realize there's people coming out of the ground, right? This is freaking me out a little bit. Haven't seen that before. And he's doing his dance and all that. And I was like, well, that's cool. But then his eyes stay that yellow in the video. Little tidbit information. I'm sure a lot of people know this. And we are at Heroes of Humility huge fans of the one and only Eddie Van Halen. But Eddie Van Halen played some riffs in the background of that. Oh, no. You know what? I'm thinking of Beat It. I take that back.
I was going to say, I did not know that. I did not know that.
I'm confusing. Now, he played some riffs on the Beat It song. I don't think he ever really asked for credit or wanted anything. He was obviously a guitar and keyboard and musical genius. So anyway, yeah, this was kind of a rough situation for me. But long story short is that Katie and I don't think it was necessarily just because of maybe how I didn't look tough enough to watch Thriller at 5 or 6, but eventually I just don't think I was her type. And that was my first exposure to rejection, dude. And it wasn't like I asked her out or anything like that. I mean, we were kids, but she didn't seem as into me as I was into her. And I was like, what's happening? What is this foreign feeling of disappointment?
Yeah, everybody
and
likes me.
sadness? Yeah. My parents said I'm special.
Yeah,
what's going on?
There you go.
How does Katie not recognize my specialness? So that was a tough one. And I think that's helped me. It's helped me with other family members when I've tried to give them advice. Yeah, there's little things that creep into your psyche and allows you to be more compassionate. If you had never had that and all the Katies in the world always just adored you, maybe you wouldn't be as compassionate or as gracious a human being. I think you have to have some things go wrong to be a well-rounded person.
And that's kind of my point. And I think even the comedian put it well when she was talking about it was that, think about it. If you had a life that everything was given to you, you never really had to do without, you didn't have anybody pass in your life, think about how your level of consciousness would be, and you might not take things so serious because you never had anything bad happen to you, right? But it's those times where things happen to you, whether it's bad or there's like, quote, suffering involved, whether it's a loss or something didn't work out right with the job or whatnot, and you're just down in the dumps, but man, it worked out because you found a new job that paid you better and actually gave you more experience. And it wouldn't happen unless you lost that job that you probably wouldn't have quit until you got fired or the place closed. Like even talking about, I remember when you were talking, I was thinking about my first girlfriend. I can't remember if it was like first grade. I don't even remember. You're so young. How you like, it wasn't like, oh, I need a girlfriend. I met this girl. I liked her. She liked me, obviously. We chase each other on the playground, and she ended up going to the same after school care with me, so we hung out a lot. Like, we'd play a lot, and for the most part boys play with boys and girls play with girls because they had similar interests. So, but this was kind of unique. I liked this girl. She was pretty, and then we'd go hang out in the little tunnel on the playground and stuff like that. Well, it was awesome, and then to come to find out at the end of the school year, they were moving to a different state. Oh, man, I was like bummed. And this is the days where phones are corded to your wall and they didn't know where they were moving. A long distance costs some money. I know that's kind of a weird thing.
It's not like you guys could establish a connection through your Facebook account.
No, and I'm sure just like most parents would be like, how serious is a first grade relationship going to be, right? But
meanwhile, you're bawling your eyes out every night, laying in the fetal position.
Yeah, it was like devastating because it was like, oh, wow, it was like this magical moment where, again, when you're in probably first grade, boys and girls aren't thinking about, oh, I want a girlfriend, I want a boyfriend. But it just was like a friendship that kind of turned that way. And then it ended without her control, that she had to move away, and without my control. So then your next little boyfriend, girlfriend, it's like, okay, this one's better. But then I dealt with loss and of a relationship, and to me that helps build the ones that you ultimately achieve, and it makes it better. You know what I mean?
This reminds me, have you seen that song? It's a Phil Collins song, and I think it's called Do You Remember? Let me look, see. Have you seen that video?
God, it's not coming up to my head right now.
That's it. Do You Remember? That's the name of the song. You got to see that video. It's exactly what just happened to you. It's going to rip your heart out, man. So
oh shoot, I probably know the song once it starts playing, but
yeah.
It's not coming to my head.
More
right
importantly, watch the video. The whole video is about this little boy and girl that get separated when they're little, and they have to say goodbye to each other, and they liked each other. There's art imitating life, dude. It's imitating your life.
Well,
Phil Collins, he got you.
And it's awesome because if you think about it, if you live your life to where you don't seek out friendship because you're worried about the loss and the suffering of losing that friend or them not liking you, then you'll never experience how good it was to have that friend or have that relationship or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good one. Interesting. And that would be a way that you could also probably help your kid, your son, when you give him advice. For some reason, those are rough. Obviously, pets. I've told some other horrifically painful stories on heroes. I hate to repeat my pain, but if people can benefit from it, bosses don't always like you. I had a boss once tell me that my pants were too tight, and he didn't say it directly to me, but he eventually worked his courage up to do it. But before then, he had leaked it to some other people, and I think deep down they're thinking, no, Pierce's pants are just their right amount of tightness. What's your deal, bro? And this bro just didn't like me. He was kind of a jerk, I guess, but he owned the restaurant. So what are you going to do? Luckily I didn't stay there much longer, but
no, you're right. And
it was painful, dude.
I think we can look back on our jobs that we've had in our life. And I remember one supervisor I had, and just for whatever reason, he didn't like me or didn't get along with me, or hell, even care to try. And I was kind of baffled by it. Again, I don't want or try to be everybody's best friend. And I get sometimes as a boss, you don't want to be, because maybe there's you don't want to treat people unfair because you might be closer to one guy or girl over another. I try to live by the credo of treat others how like you'd like to be treated. So I guess if I put myself as the boss, you don't want to be everybody's best friend, but at least be friendly. And just like passing this guy in the hallway, it was a lot just to say good morning.
Jeez.
And
I think I know who this is too.
Well, you don't, because you don't. This the one supervisor that's actually coming to my mind. No, you probably wouldn't know. I was in a different office, but I guess to my point is that then when you have a good one, it's like, because you know what, that is probably,
you appreciate it.
I will say, in my life, that is probably one thing that there's definitely some suffering and during the day, like if you have a crappy boss, I'm sure listeners can relate to this, because most of us work for a boss. If you don't, congratulations. But there's some other suffering you probably go through. But do you know, like, when you have a crappy boss, that like you just stepping in the doors of the office, it just it starts
to eat away in your Sunday. You only have one day off, which is Saturday, because Sunday you're thinking about it, and then Monday you got to deal with this nut job again. I know exactly what that's like, because we've all had a boss like that.
Yeah, I guess for part of me, it's like it just brings you down, like, because no matter what comes up during the day, it's like the opposite, or it's gonna mean there's gonna be something you're gonna have to do that you're gonna like.
Your world completely changes with a bad boss. And think about this: if you're a boss out there and you're in a position of authority, and you're able to have an impact on people's lives, whether it's just approving some request for leave, or in how you handle something that doesn't go perfect, because it won't always go just the way it should, you have a great deal of influence and impact on people, even if you don't earn or have a credible association to that power. In other words, a lot of people probably question, with a boss like that, how do they got there? The unfortunate part is that person is now in a position like this, and they have this power. In other words, it wasn't given to them appropriately. But since they're there, if they had the ability to appreciate how they could make lives better instead of worse, what a cool opportunity, but what a blown opportunity if you're a bad boss, man.
Well, absolutely. And, talking with your colleagues and your partners that you work with, it's the good bosses that when they come around, it's not because they know everything and they're super knowledgeable. It's how they look at their perspective on life. And if there's a crappy situation that comes up at work, it's not that crappy because your boss will work it out in the best way possible to where, the workload's even between your coworkers, or, hey, you know what? If I got a good boss, we can go through some crap and take care of business. You're
willing to do more too for the boss.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the crappy bosses, I mean, think about it. When there would be an opportunity, I'm sure there's listeners that can identify that when it's time for them to be a boss, they'll hopefully look back and remember what it was like to be a regular Joe Schmo worker, and then be a supervisor now to like, okay, I remember what it's like. Now, we know, believe you me, that supervisors then, or bosses will have to make a decision that will be unfavorable to people, and they're put in there to make those decisions, and it might be for the overall good of the company or whatever you want to call it, but it's going to suck. But when you feel like it's a good boss, they'll bring you in, they'll talk to you about it like, hey, this is coming down the pipe. None of us like it. We're all going to have a go at it, but your time is coming.
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound a lot easier than the like, hey, you're up first, just grin and bear it, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
Going into like the same rotation or whatever it is you're going to do, you have a completely different mindset in it.
I don't know where people lose their humanity or their ability to be human with people. And sometimes when people get into those positions, that happens. And they forget about what would probably be more conducive to that person being, or maybe they've never understood it because like we were talking about, I think that when you go through suffering in life, there's really two ways that you can come out on the other end. You could be more compassionate, more empathetic, and able to have, sympathy and other ways of looking at things, especially for the benefit of the people that you might oversee, for lack of a better word, at least during the 8 hours or so that you're at a job. But you see another way people can go, which is they just become harder, or they feel like that they want to make other people go through ordeals like they did. And maybe that is a way that they find some kind of, equilibrium.
Or pleasure from, treating people badly or something because they can, I guess.
It's like that. Remember that scene in Tombstone where Doc Holliday is on his deathbed and Wyatt Earp goes in and says, what makes Ringo do the things he does? What makes somebody do those kind of things that because he's got to go face this guy who wants to kill him? And I love the writing in that movie. And he says, there's just certain people that have a big hole in them and they can never kill enough or inflict enough pain to fill it. And you think, man, that's awful. That there might be people that have been hurt so much, or they want, I remember in the movie, he says, they want revenge. And Wyatt says, for what? And he says, for being born. And you're like, damn, that's a really bleak way to look at it. But I hope people don't want revenge for being born, but there are just people that are unhappy and they something happened that didn't go the way they wanted at some point, or they got disappointed, and we all have, but that just made them so jaded that they're unable, they lose their humanity some way, and it's crazy.
But if you think about it, and I'm not trying to belittle certain people's, bad times and suffering in their life, but it is a perspective, and you don't want to put, icing on the cake every single time. And, sometimes people want to focus on the negative, but do you learn from that negative to turn it into a positive, to have a better outcome in your life? I mean, when you have a crappy boss, are you now the employee that builds up a wall and is like, I don't care, I'm just there from 8 to 5, I'm not going to do anything extra, show up early, stay late? Nope, I had a crappy boss, I am not going to focus on the next boss I get, trying to impress them or whatnot. Or like we said, a boyfriend or girlfriend, you know what, I'm over, I have a big heartbreak, I'm never getting into a relationship ever again. Like, think about it, you're focusing on the negative. If you turn that suffering into a positive, like, what it felt like to feel like crap and you down in the ditches, but there's a bright light, you're at the bottom, and hell, the only way is up now.
Think about working with people who are going through the motions, especially when you've got to count on people, or you're going to people to share tactics or challenges. And it's unfortunate, not to get on another subject, but sometimes just for whatever reason, people are just showing up in life, in work, or wherever. And that's a hard one for me because I probably am annoying to some people. I mean, that's why.
No, never, dude.
I know it's hard to believe.
Never.
My mom would disagree with that statement because she said I was one of the most special boys she ever. But I mean, I'm sure I could be annoying, but I just don't understand the apathetic approach to doing anything. I feel like if I'm going to do something, I may as well do it above the 100% I can give until I've done the very best I can do. And it's hard, but you have to appreciate that people have different causes or effects, and maybe they get to that point, because otherwise that would be harder for you. I think of one of the people who had one of the hardest jobs and had one of the most difficult lives that you can imagine. This may not be fair to say across history, but certainly one that comes to mind is Abraham Lincoln. And one of the quotes that I know is attributed to him, and probably with error, but it is, and a lot of good ones were, because that happens, but gosh, I couldn't think of a better guy to attribute this one to. And it goes something like this, that most people are only about as happy as they make up their minds to be. And I love that because, at least it was authentic to his character, where he really continued to try to persevere despite overwhelming odds and negativity. And that kind of negativity, you can see how it aged him, but he still tried not to demonstrate it in what I even heard him say in a speech, but read, is in the better angels of our nature. When he was trying to bring the country together and people were at odds like they are now, like has been always the case, especially as things become politicized and probably oversimplified and we polarize one another, is that not everybody thinks in a dogmatic way on one or side of an issue. Usually we want the same thing, but we have different ways of getting there. And when we focus so much on these things that that we have different, we forget what we have in common. And Abraham Lincoln was probably who we needed at a very special part in history, because he was trying to remind us, no, we have a lot in common. It's the better angels of our nature that we should be letting kind of direct us, because we're all capable of having bad thoughts and doing bad things, but we're also capable of doing good things. And that is the way you hope to come out on the other end of suffering, is to be a little bit more human, a little better.
Correct. And you cherish those moments that it's good.
Yeah.
Because you know how bad sometimes the low times can be, that dang, when the good times are good, you definitely enjoy it.
The other thing that I had that was really tough when I was growing up was divorce. My parents got divorced, and that was a hard one. I used to say a prayer every night, and there wasn't anything that I didn't think God would answer for me. And it was that I was just raised, very to have a lot of faith, and it's something you kind of develop. It's not always really something that you just wake up having. It's something that you consider and think about. But mine was in this higher power, and I remember praying to him and saying, please just don't let my parents get divorced. But you don't always get what you ask for or pray for, whatever you believe in. And that taught me a lot. I learned a lot, and maybe I even became better and got closer to what goodness is by learning about that ordeal. It isn't what I wanted. I would have rather prevented it. I was thinking about something you said today about when you posed this scenario to your mom, about, well, what would you do if you won the lottery? And unfortunately, just maybe she was in that particular mood, but you said you've noticed an orientation and thought or pattern with her is that, and maybe it's a generational thing, but there's just a little bit of a negativity built in, and always thinking what's going to be the worst outfall of that. And what was her, what do you take from her answer?
No, and I guess that's the ultimate point that I was getting to with when I told you that story, was that some people tend to focus on the negative and not the positive. So without her realizing, and I asked this question because I was just kind of like, wow, sometimes she goes into certain scenarios, and I feel, again, it's my opinion, that she goes into feeling the negative. Like whether it's just an interaction at a store or whatnot, she puts her bad foot forward instead of her good foot forward, right? I don't know why or how, or if that's just her character upbringing or what it is, but sometimes that she's that way. And so I asked her the question, hey mom, just curious, how would you feel about if you won like $2 million lottery? And she was just like, well, I just don't want people asking me for money, or that might make people come to me that don't have integrity just because they want to get something out of me. And that was the first thought that came to her mind. And I was just like, even though I kind of knew that be the answer, it still was shocking to me to kind of go like, wow, I think like myself, if somebody asked me that question, I'm like, oh man, I want to take that trip I've always wanted to take to Europe or somewhere, or, I want to buy myself a vehicle or buy myself a new house or go out with my friends to, a certain venue or go see a concert that I've been dying to see that's expensive or something like that. I guess I might tend to put my more positive thought on mind. But again, I mean, nothing is horribly wrong with it to me, because we do need the world to to cycle around. I mean, there's enough people that are positive, but we also have people that are negative. But it's just kind of like, wow, how can my mom, who's definitely, when she grew up, there was some suffering involved. I mean, just the time and the economy and stuff like that, she's doing okay now. She's retired and she's doing okay. So usually when someone's like, hey, here's $2 million, you want it, man, most people get excited. At least I know for me, the first thing I do, oh, that's cool, that's exciting.
Well, you can't also, if you want to meet people where they are, that's the best time you can help them, though. That's hard, and especially with relatives, because with somebody in passing, if they're real negative, or, you may not necessarily want to find yourself in their company over and over again. But when it's somebody that you really are connected with and you want to help, or you have an interdependent relationship or purpose that requires you to be together, you may even try to persist, and that would be an opportunity, because again, to use your own difficulties to meet them and be like, okay, well, maybe they're having a bad time, maybe they're going through a difficult thing, they had a difficult this or that, but that hopefully helps, because otherwise, we can't just avoid everybody who has maybe a bad day, even if it's a bad month or a bad year, because hopefully at some point those people are getting some help too. And I mean, we've all been there at some point probably, but yeah, it's the way you kind of come through it.
Yeah, I guess to me, one of the reasons why I asked my mom that was just because she kept telling me every time she would go into a store or have an interaction particularly her with the cell phone store, or to go pay a bill or something like that, or she was having trouble at Costco with the purchase or whatnot, and she just said, yeah, that person had attitude with me. And then one of the times I went with her, and I'm like, man, I'd probably give her attitude too, because the way she came in was like, yeah, this phone, it's not working right. I cannot get it to do it. Can you fix this? You guys did, like, it very accusatory. And it's like, this person has no idea. And most likely with my mom with her phone, it's a smartphone, and she didn't grow up with smartphones. So it's usually something small, easy fix. Like something got changed or there was an update, so she can't find it. But when you approach it like that, where you're just kind of more accusatory, like, help me with this, you guys did something to my phone. If you go into it with that personality, what kind of feedback are you going to get back from the person? Is kind of like, whoa, this guy or gal is really like annoyed and ticked off. This is going to be a bad experience for me.
Well, it's rough if you've had like a lot of things going wrong too. Like, let's say your like basic needs are being challenged, whether it's your health or your home or your economic situation, probably to have more positivity. So that's something I bet creeps into that. But yeah, you've really, that's a tough one, Red. You really, this was, hopefully we are doing a service, but when you have to reflect on, your rejection from Katie, and, your mom not knowing how to spend the $2 million correctly. And hopefully we don't bring people down, but life is not always, like the antics that the Heroes of Humility is truly about. We're trying to find the way through things that are awkward or socially off, but hopefully at the end, we come out better human beings. I mean, almost as perfect as Red and Pierce.
Yeah, and what you think about it, there's probably some episodes where definitely more laughing and joking, but maybe this is the slow song on a heavy metal album.
Oh, nice. Very good analogy.
And it's like, you know what? There are times I need to feel something that I can think about and take in retrospect.
Love Bites by Def Leppard. It's a slow one, but it still
It
gets
still
you,
hits
dude.
you and feels good.
Yeah, you could be all hunky-dory listening to Pour Some Sugar on Me, but when that Love Bites come on, you're like, you know what? It does bite.
You know what's funny? I was just thinking about that. I was listening to some Ozzy, and there's some great soundtracks, some Black Sabbath. It's really kind of like hard, yeah. And then Mama Comes Home. Mama, I'm coming home. Yeah. That's a slow one, and you're kind of like, shit, I kind of feel embarrassed about that one. And you're like, at the end of it, you're singing it. You're like, Dad, this is good.
Yeah, should I turn this one up as loud? Do I listen to this as hard as the other ones? That song is about him coming home to Sharon, his wife. Because he used to be on the road so much, and I heard him discuss that was the idea behind that song.
Isn't that crazy though? But like, you think of like the majority of his stuff is almost a different sound.
Yeah. And
then you hear that. I mean, you can think of a lot of great artists. They'll have probably one slow or two slow songs in their album, and you're just kind of like, at first time I heard it, I wasn't really sure about it because it didn't sound like the rest. But it was needed. Right. And usually, if you're a fan of that, you still like all their songs to include the ones that aren't like all the other ones.
Yeah, because how else would you be able to slow dance in junior high if all the songs were fast? I remember the first girl that I slow danced with, and it was a slow song like that. And if that song hadn't come on, I wouldn't have been able to have this very passionate, romantic encounter at such an early age. And
very, very smooth little Pierce.
Yeah, I was a sultry little guy.
You know what? You brought up a topic I just thought about. Not necessarily a topic, but it just came to my head. I remember this being a weird thing, and we've talked about this before, where you wish you could bring your wisdom to your young self. And I remember being in the one and only dance I went to in junior high. And you get there and you're like, oh, wow. Like, you're just kind of like getting into girls, like, and you're like, okay, yeah, there's some cute girls at my school. So you go to this dance and you put on your best freaking t-shirt or whatever. And you go and you ask your brother for a squirt of cologne, and you go, and all the guys are on one side of the dance floor and all the girls are on the other, and nobody knows what to do. And it's like, don't you wish you had the wisdom? Because like, you were, as a kid, you're so worried about, I don't dance well. I don't know what I'm going to dance to. Do I dance good? Do I look okay?
No, I was right with you, except for those last examples. I can't relate to that.
You always had flowing locks.
But I did find as I got a little bit older, because I can relate to that scenario of the wallflowers on either end of the room in the gymnasium. But I remember that there was also a little bit of magic that could happen if you just started kind of transitioning into your maneuvers before you actually started dancing on the floor. So you don't just, here's the thing you should know, and I don't know if there's any junior high kids listening or even high school kids. Probably.
I doubt it.
But here's a lesson for you guys, okay? When this scenario happens in the gymnasium or wherever it is, and you got your finest duds on with your Van Halen shirt and your checkered Vans. By the way, put some insoles in those. They're too flat. They're not good for your feet. Trying to help the kids. But when you go out on the dance floor, don't just walk out there, dude. Go out and start to feel the groove before you get there. Do a little bit of a saunter and start moving with the rhythm before you get into the middle of the dance floor. And the rest will follow. And that was the way to get people to, enjoy the companionship of their co-dancer.
Well, they see, other people will see like, hey, you know what? This guy's willing to put himself out there. Yeah. Just do it. I will just say, practice those moves. One PSA is you don't want to make sure you dance like Elaine from Seinfeld, because then you will be the laughing stock. But at least if you're like, hey, maybe show your parent or something like, hey, he's actually not bad. Like, don't be ashamed of that.
So don't show up for the first time and try your maneuver in front of other people. You're saying do it at home in front of the mirror first.
You know what? I think I was fortunate because I remember being a young man. Speaking of my mom, she liked music and she liked to dance. And she would grab me and make me dance with her. And you as a little kid, you're kind of like, oh, this is dumb. Like, mom's making me do something. This is embarrassing. And then you turn it into like, okay, I like this song. Like, this is what I do. And then she kind of would tell me how to dance to it and stuff like that. But then I remember being a younger man and going out with my buddies. And some of my buddies were just like, it was like their worst thing to do would be to get on the dance floor to try to dance, because it would be like the most embarrassing thing. And I remember telling one specific buddy of mine, they don't care, and the girls dance just as crappy as probably you do. Just get out there and shake it a little bit, and they'll see that you just want to have fun. You don't have to be great. You just get out there and do something.
This is why you and I have a cosmic connection, dude, because you're not so wrapped around how is this going to look or what are people going to think. There's a point at which you just kind of go for it, and that's what I love about you, and that's what I love about myself. I guess is what I really want to talk about.
Let's end it on that.
That's a great place to end it. But yeah, we hope we've done some good here. We are tight on this one, just under an hour, which is the precision accuracy we tend to shoot for. We don't always target it exactly, but we think that just over 15 minutes would be just a little bit too much of listening to Pierce.
Sometimes when you're striving perfection, that perfection takes a little longer. Though, right?
That's true. And we try to play it by ear. We don't have a hard out at a certain time, but we think you've enjoyed this with us, maybe even more than you care to admit. Deep down in your very essence, in your nucleus, you'll think about the words of wisdom that Red and I have shared, and hopefully they'll help you. Maybe not just you, but somebody else. Maybe you'll go out there and be like, you know what? Pierce told me that Abraham Lincoln said you're only about as happy as you make up your mind to be. And you can tell other people, and they'll be like, man, they're going to think you're a genius.
So. I know, it's just bright mind.
Yeah, it is just something that I think we wanted to share with y'all. Hope that you enjoyed it. Take care, stay safe, drive carefully, and be cool by being kind. This is Pierce signing off with
Red.
Later.